First, like this video, hit subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Imagine standing on the sun-baked sands of ancient Alexandria, the scent of the Mediterranean Sea carried on a gentle breeze, and the air thrumming with ambition. It was here, in the burgeoning capital of the Ptolemaic kingdom, that a dream of unprecedented scale began to unfurl. A universal library, a repository for all human knowledge. This wasn't merely a royal whim. It was a sophisticated state-sponsored endeavor conceived against the backdrop of Alexander the Great's intellectual vision and the subsequent cultural explosion of the Hellenistic age. The genesis of this monumental institution is often attributed to Ptolemy, first Soter, one of Alexander's most trusted generals, who assumed the pharaonic mantle of Egypt around 305 BCE. While the precise foundation date remains debated among historians, the most widely accepted period of active construction and collection began during his reign. His successor, Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, however, is credited with truly expanding the project into the global intellectual powerhouse it became. He reportedly allocated vast resources, establishing a dedicated budget, and commissioning an unparalleled campaign of acquisition. The library was not a standalone structure, but an integral component of the museum. Literally, the Temple of Muses, a grand research institution that housed scholars, poets, astronomers, and engineers. Located in the Brutian Royal Quarter, near the Royal Palace, the museum featured lecture halls, observatories, dissecting rooms, and botanical gardens. The library itself, likely comprising multiple buildings and extensive storage facilities for papyrus scrolls, served as the central organ, its vast collection fueling the intellectual pursuits of the resident scholars. Early estimates suggest a collection numbering in the tens of thousands of scrolls even in its nascent stages, a figure that would rapidly escalate. The method of acquisition was ruthless and comprehensive. Ptolemaic agents scoured the known world. All ships entering the port of Alexandria were subject to inspection. Any scrolls found on board were confiscated, copied by the library's scribes, and the originals stored, often without recompense, or with inadequate copies returned to their owners. This policy, a testament to the library's immense power and influence, ensured a constant influx of diverse texts from Greece, Persia, India, and beyond. This aggressive collection strategy, coupled with the employment of elite scholars to translate and catalogue, quickly established the library as the unparalleled center of learning in the ancient world. It was a dream born of imperial ambition, a testament to the power of knowledge, and a beacon in the Hellenistic cultural landscape. From the ambitious vision of its founders, the Library of Alexandria rapidly transitioned from a conceptual dream to a concrete reality, its physical and intellectual architecture rising from the Alexandrian landscape. The crafting of this intellectual citadel involved not just the acquisition of scrolls, but the disciplined organization, meticulous preservation, and scholarly curation of an unparalleled collection. This was a sophisticated operation, far more advanced than any previous library. Central to its operation was the appointment of highly esteemed scholars as its chief librarians. Demetrius of Phalerum, a peripatetic philosopher and former Athenian statesman, served as a key advisor to Ptolemy I, laying much of the foundational philosophical and organizational groundwork. While not officially the first director, his influence in its early development was profound. The first confirmed head librarian was Zenodotus of Ephesus, who held the position around 284–270 BCE. he initiated the painstaking work of collating, editing, and establishing critical editions of classical Greek texts, notably the works of Homer, an undertaking that provided standardized versions for centuries. The library's physical structure, although largely lost to time, was functionally brilliant for its era. Imagine vast halls lined with wooden shelves, each niche carefully designed for papyrus rolls. Scrolls, rather than books as we know them, were the primary medium. Each scroll would have been identified by a syllabos, a small attached tag detailing its author and title. Callimachus of Cyrene, a brilliant poet and scholar who served at the library during the 3rd century BCE, compiled the Pinaikes, a monumental 120-book bibliographic catalogue classifying the library's holdings by author and subject. This meticulous cataloguing system was revolutionary, serving as the world's first comprehensive library catalogue and prototype for modern bibliographic organization. The sheer scale of the collection remains a subject of historical debate, but ancient sources indicate staggering numbers. Estimates range from 40,000 to an astonishing 700,000 scrolls at its zenith. It's crucial to understand that a single play or treatise might comprise multiple scrolls. Regardless, the library represented an accumulation of written knowledge unprecedented in antiquity. This treasure trove was more than just a passive repository. It was a vibrant community of scholars, a dynamic engine of research and learning. The meticulous organization and dedicated scholarship transformed a mere collection of texts into a usable and accessible body of knowledge, cementing Alexandria's role as the intellectual heart of the Hellenistic world. Stepping beyond the monumental scope of its creation and organization, let us now immerse ourselves in the daily rhythm of the Library of Alexandria, where the scent of aged papyrus, perhaps mingled with cedar oil used for preservation, permeated the air. This was a place of vibrant intellectual activity, far from a silent vault of forgotten texts. The day-to-day life within its halls was a dynamic interplay of research, teaching, writing, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge, underpinned by an administrative apparatus that was remarkably sophisticated for its time. At the heart of the library's dynamic environment were its resident scholars, or scholars, who benefited from royal patronage, including stipends, lodging within the museum complex, and communal meals. This enabled them to dedicate their lives entirely to study and scholarship, forming a thriving intellectual community. Their days would have involved deep engagement with the vast collection, meticulously cross-referencing texts, debating philosophical points, and conducting original research. Imagine Eratosthenes, the chief librarian around 240 BCE, not only overseeing the colossal collection, but also calculating the Earth's circumference with astonishing accuracy using basic geometry and observations of shadows in Syene and Alexandria. The practicalities of interacting with thousands of papyrus scrolls were undoubtedly challenging. Readers would carefully unroll sections of text, often requiring both hands, and then re-roll them, ensuring the fragility of the ancient medium was respected. Scribes, employed in significant numbers, played a crucial role. They were tasked with copying new acquisitions, transcribing damaged older scrolls, and producing multiple editions of important works. This continuous process of copying was vital, as original literary works were often recorded on a single papyrus roll, making copies essential for dissemination and preservation. Beyond individual study, the library also functioned as a center for teaching and public discourse. Scholars delivered lectures, engaged in philosophical discussions, and mentored younger intellects. While not a public lending library in the modern sense, its resources were accessible to those within the museum's orbit and to visiting dignitaries and scholars under specific conditions. The rigorous daily activities, from careful reading and copying to deep philosophical inquiry and groundbreaking scientific investigation, solidified the Library of Alexandria not just as a grand repository, but as the pulsating heart of the ancient intellectual world, where the boundaries of human understanding were continually pushed. Beyond the intellectual debates and groundbreaking discoveries, the very existence of the Library of Alexandria, and indeed the preservation and dissemination of ancient knowledge, hinged upon a less glamorous but equally vital art, that of the scribe. Imagine hushed scriptoria, where the rhythmic scratch of reeds on papyrus was a constant, almost meditative sound echoing the meticulous labor that preserved the world's wisdom. The process began with the raw material itself, papyrus. Harvested from the Nile Delta, the papyrus plant was processed into sheets, pressed and dried, then glued together to form long rolls, typically 6 to 10 meters in length, though some monumental works could require significantly longer rolls. The quality of the papyrus varied, impacting the longevity and usability of the finished book. Writing implements consisted of reed pens, sharpened and split, and ink made from soot, gum arabic, and water. Scribes were highly skilled professionals, trained in various scripts and often specializing in particular genres or languages. Their work was not merely transcription, it was a complex act of preservation and replication. When a new text arrived at the library, it underwent collation, a careful comparison with existing versions to identify discrepancies and establish the most accurate reading. If deemed valuable or unique, it would then be assigned for copying. This involved a scribe carefully dictating to another, or more commonly, copying text character by character onto a fresh roll. Errors were inevitable, but experienced scribes cultivated an impressive accuracy, often adding marginal notes and corrections. Preservation was an ongoing battle against time, insects, and the humid Alexandrian climate. Papyrus is susceptible to deterioration, becoming brittle, infested by worms, or moldy. The scrolls were often treated with cedar oil to repel insects and occasionally re-rolled onto new wooden cores. Specialized librarians supervised these processes, ensuring the integrity of the immense collection. The systematic copying meant that even if an original scroll decayed, a replacement copy, or even multiple copies, existed. This meticulous art of copying and preservation was the unsung hero of the library, guaranteeing that the intellectual heritage of centuries would be available not just to contemporary scholars, but to future generations, underscoring the library's commitment to the enduring legacy of human thought. Emerging from the detailed world of scribes and papyrus, we turn our gaze outward to the diverse intellectual currents that flowed into Alexandria. The library was not merely a passive recipient of texts, it was a vibrant magnet, drawing the greatest minds of the Hellenistic world. Scholars, philosophers, scientists, and poets converged from every corner of the Mediterranean and beyond, transforming Alexandria into the undisputed intellectual crossroads of its era. This intellectual migration was actively encouraged by the Ptolemaic rulers. Royal patronage extended beyond providing salaries and lodging for resident scholars at the museum. It created an environment where intellectual pursuit was not just tolerated, but celebrated and financially supported. The sheer concentration of knowledge, a collection unparalleled in its breadth and depth, was the primary lure. For a scholar of mathematics, literature, medicine, or astronomy, Access to this vast repository was an opportunity that could not be found anywhere else. Consider figures like Euclid, the father of geometry, whose seminal work Elements profoundly influenced mathematics for over 2 millennia. He taught and conducted research in Alexandria during the reign of Ptolemy I, or Aristarchus of Samos, who, long before Copernicus, proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system. While his original work is lost, his theories were documented and studied within the Alexandrian intellectual sphere. Galen, the renowned physician, studied medicine in Alexandria before making his significant contributions to Roman medicine. These individuals, and hundreds like them, were drawn by the promise of unfettered access to information and the stimulating intellectual environment fostered by the library and museum. The interaction among these diverse minds was crucial. Scholars arrived not only with the intent to learn, but to contribute. They brought new methodologies, different philosophical perspectives, and texts from their own cultures, further enriching the library's collection and intellectual discourse. Debates were fierce, theories were tested, and new ideas were forged in this crucible of knowledge. This concentration of talent and resources transformed Alexandria into an unprecedented intellectual hub, pushing the boundaries of human understanding in virtually every field imaginable. It created an ecosystem where the very act of bringing together disparate intellectual traditions stimulated innovation and discovery on a scale rarely seen in human history. With scholars convened from across the ancient world, the Library of Alexandria transcended its role as a mere repository to become a vibrant intellectual battlefield. Under the bright Egyptian sky, within the very walls of the museum, ideas clashed and coalesced, driving forward unprecedented advancements in human thought. This was a period characterized by intense academic discourse, rigorous debate, and the groundbreaking synthesis of diverse traditions. The intellectual exchanges were rarely polite. Picture the grand halls, alive with the passionate arguments of grammarians refining Homeric texts, philosophers dissecting ethical dilemmas, and astronomers challenging existing cosmologies. One significant area of debate was literary criticism. The library's vast collection allowed for comparative studies of authors and genres, leading to the development of sophisticated critical methodologies. Zenodotus, the first head librarian, was renowned for his critical editions of Homer, meticulously comparing various manuscripts to establish preferred readings, a practice that sometimes led to vehement disagreements with other scholars advocating different textual traditions. In the realm of science, the presence of multiple perspectives often spurred innovation. The Alexandrian School of Medicine, for instance, pioneered anatomical studies through human dissection, a controversial practice at the time. Herophilus and Erasistratus, prominent Alexandrian physicians, conducted groundbreaking research that challenged earlier, more theoretical medical understanding, basing their findings on empirical observation. Their work, documented and debated within the library, laid foundations for Western medicine. Philosophy also thrived amidst this intellectual ferment. While not originating new schools of thought to the same extent as Athens, Alexandria became a vital center for the study, interpretation, and critique of existing philosophical systems such as Platonism, Aristotelianism, and Stoicism. Scholars would engage in learned commentaries, trying to reconcile differing viewpoints or articulate new nuances within established frameworks. This culture of critical inquiry, fostered by the sheer availability of texts and the patronage of the Ptolemies, allowed for a vigorous exchange of ideas. It was an environment of healthy skepticism, where theories were subjected to scrutiny and evidence was meticulously examined. The clash of ancient ideas, rather than stifling progress, became the very engine of intellectual advancement, cementing the Library of Alexandria's reputation not just as a storehouse, but as a dynamic laboratory of human thought. While the Library of Alexandria served as an internal sanctuary for scholarship, its influence extended far beyond its walls, mirroring the radiating light of another Alexandrian marvel, the Pharos. Just as the towering lighthouse guided seafarers to the city's prosperous harbours, the library's intellectual output shone a beacon across the ancient world, its reach impacting navigation, trade, and even the very understanding of the globe. The symbiotic relationship between the library and the city's maritime prominence is critical to understanding its broad impact. Alexandria was a bustling port, the hub of Ptolemaic Egypt's immense wealth, and a vital nexus for trade routes connecting east and west. This constant flow of goods brought a parallel flow of ideas, people, and, critically, texts that enriched the library's holdings. Conversely, the library's scholars made direct contributions to the practical challenges of seafaring. One of the most profound contributions arose from the field of geography and cartography. Eratosthenes, a polymath and chief librarian, produced one of the earliest and most accurate maps of the entire known world. More famously, as discussed previously, he calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable precision, a fundamental piece of knowledge for long-distance sailing. His work, drawing upon the vast geographical and astronomical data housed in the library, was not merely academic. It provided a scientific basis for better navigation and understanding oceanic travel. Similarly, the astronomical observations and mathematical treatises compiled and generated within the library were crucial for determining latitude and charting courses. The meticulous records of constellations, star movements, and calendrical systems provided sailors with reliable tools for orientation at sea. Beyond these direct applications, the library's sheer reputation attracted individuals who, after their studies, would return to their home countries, carrying Alexandrian knowledge and methods with them. Thus, the library, much like the Pharos, was a vital artery of information. It collected, synthesized, and then disseminated knowledge that had tangible, practical applications for the vast shipping networks centered at Alexandria. Its intellectual light stretched outwards, illuminating not just the minds within its hallowed halls, but also guiding the ships that traversed the Mediterranean, charting the course for future exploration and global understanding. The city's dual identity as a center of commerce and scholarship made it an unparalleled force in the ancient world. Beyond the bustling port and the rigorous intellectual debates, the Library of Alexandria also offered a unique environment of profound contemplation, a silent counterpoint to the city's vibrant sounds. Imagine the scholars having spent hours poring over papyrus, perhaps stepping onto a balcony to gaze upon the vast, shimmering expanse of the Mediterranean Sea, finding inspiration and solace in its endless horizon. This geographical setting, a nexus between cultures and a gateway to the unknown, profoundly influenced the nature of inquiry fostered in Alexandria. The close proximity to the sea connected Alexandria tangibly to the wider world, and also symbolically to the boundless nature of knowledge. The rhythmic wash of waves against the shore could have served as a meditative backdrop for the profound, intellectual work being undertaken. This contemplative aspect is often overlooked in narratives focusing solely on the library's function as a repository. Yet, moments of quiet reflection were undoubtedly crucial for synthesizing complex ideas, formulating new theories, and making the conceptual leaps that defined Alexandrian scholarship. It was in this atmosphere, where the tangible world met abstract thought, that figures like Hipparchus made foundational contributions to trigonometry and observational astronomy, constructing star catalogues that would influence generations of astronomers. Euclid's geometric proofs, while rooted in rigorous logic, might have also been inspired by the perfect curves and lines observed in nature, or perhaps the contemplation of how the vastness of the cosmos could be distilled into elegant mathematical principles. The geographical position of Alexandria, at a cultural and economic crossroads, infused its scholars with a unique multi-perspectival approach. They were not isolated. They were situated at the confluence of Egyptian traditions, Greek philosophy, Babylonian astronomy, and Persian artistic influences. This silent introspection, complemented by the lively intellectual exchange, allowed for a deeper understanding of the human condition and the natural world. The sea symbolized exploration and discovery, mirroring the intellectual journeys undertaken within the library. From the pragmatic applications in navigation and cartography, discussed in the previous segment, to the profound philosophical insights, the Mediterranean seascape served as both a literal and metaphorical backdrop for the groundbreaking knowledge produced at the library. It was in this unique blend of the immediate and the infinite that the scholars of Alexandria found their vision, transforming mere data into enduring wisdom. The brilliant light of the Library of Alexandria, having guided both literal and intellectual voyages across the Mediterranean, did not exist in a vacuum. Its prosperity and ultimately its decline were inextricably linked to the volatile currents of power and politics that defined the ancient world. Even the loftiest pursuit of knowledge can be impacted or even dictated by the will of an emperor or the shifting sands of dynastic ambition. The Ptolemaic dynasty, which founded the library and sustained it for centuries, understood the profound power inherent in knowledge. Their lavish patronage wasn't merely altruism, it was a strategic investment. The library enhanced Alexandria's prestige, cemented the dynasty's intellectual authority, and attracted the brightest minds whose ingenuity could also be harnessed for practical applications, from engineering to military strategy. This symbiotic relationship between royal power and intellectual endeavor was a hallmark of the library's golden age, from its inception under Ptolemy Sota to its zenith under Ptolemy III, Euergetes. However, the pursuit of knowledge, no matter how pure, often fell victim to political machinations. The transition of power, internal strife within the Ptolemaic family, and external pressures from rising empires like Rome inevitably cast long shadows over the museum. One notable instance involved Ptolemy VIII Physcon, who, during his reign in the mid-2nd century BCE, engaged in a purge of Alexandrian intellectuals. This act, likely motivated by a desire to consolidate power and crush perceived dissent, resulted in the expulsion of many scholars. Some fled to other centers of learning, taking their knowledge and potentially portions of the library's collection with them, significantly impacting Alexandria's intellectual community. Such events underscore a critical vulnerability. Even institutions dedicated to universal knowledge are ultimately dependent on the political stability and disposition of their patrons. While an emperor's edict or a king's decree could initiate unparalleled intellectual flourishing, the same authority could, and sometimes did, disrupt it. The shift from a purely Hellenistic kingdom to a Roman province, for example, brought a new set of rulers with different priorities and a more distant relationship to the library's foundational purpose. The fate of the library, therefore, became increasingly intertwined with the broader geopolitical landscape, a testament to how even the most ambitious intellectual project can be buffeted by the winds of political power. The dazzling intellectual achievements of the Library of Alexandria were sustained by a critical yet fragile foundation: the unwavering patronage of the Ptolemaic monarchs. This royal favour, a continuous stream of funding, provision of resources, and political protection, was both its greatest strength and ultimately its latent vulnerability. For nearly 3 centuries, the Ptolemies poured immense resources into the library and museum, from Ptolemy I's initial vision to Ptolemy III. Euergetes' famous decree demanding all ships entering Alexandria surrender their books for copying. Royal intervention was consistently a catalyst for growth. Scholars were given comfortable lodgings, stipends that freed them from typical economic concerns, and access to the vast collection, often forming a direct intellectual court around the pharaohs. This patronage system ensured the library attracted and retained the very best minds, forming a continuous chain of scholarship and learning that propelled Alexandrian thought forward. However, the close tie to royal power introduced a precarious element. The fortunes of the library mirrored the stability and inclinations of the ruling dynasty. As long as a monarch championed intellectual pursuits, the library thrived. But when dynastic squabbles, economic downturns, or shifts in royal priorities occurred, the institution could suffer. A telling example is the aforementioned expulsion of scholars by Ptolemy VIII Physcon. His reign demonstrates how arbitrary royal whims could immediately dismantle years of intellectual community and scholarly accumulation. This wasn't a one-off incident. Later Ptolemies sometimes prioritized military campaigns or personal indulgences over the maintenance of scholarly institutions, leading to fluctuating support. Furthermore, the very competition that spurred its growth, such as the rivalry with the Library of Pergamum, also illustrated the reliance on state power. Each library attempted to outdo the other in terms of collection size and scholarly output, with rulers engaging in acts of diplomatic maneuvering and even embargoes, like in the case of papyrus, to gain an intellectual edge. This deep reliance on royal patronage meant that the library's fate was intrinsically linked to its rulers. As the Ptolemaic dynasty weakened and eventually fell to Roman power in 30 BCE, the steady hand of royal Egyptian backing disappeared. The transition meant a shift from being the preeminent, directly funded royal institution to becoming another part of a vast Roman province, subject to different administrative structures and priorities. The age of unbridled Ptolemaic support, which allowed the library to reach its stunning heights, gradually receded, leaving the institution vulnerable to the changing political tides of the wider Roman Empire. While the intellectual radiance of the Library of Alexandria justly captivates our attention, it is crucial to remember that this monumental institution existed within an equally monumental city. Ptolemaic Alexandria itself was a feast for the senses, a meticulously planned urban masterpiece, a vibrant tapestry of Hellenistic art and architecture that reflected its status as the richest and most powerful city in the Hellenistic world. The library was not merely housed within this city. It was an integral part of Alexandria's deliberate construction as a symbol of enlightened power and cultural hegemony. Founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, Alexandria was designed by the architect Dinocrates on a grid plan, a hallmark of Hellenistic urbanism. Its layout was functional yet aesthetically grand, intended to impress. At its heart lay the royal quarter, or Bruchium, home to the palaces, government buildings, and of course the museum and library. Imagine wide colonnaded avenues, such as the Canopic Street, stretching for miles, adorned with statues and marble. Water was supplied by an elaborate system of canals from the Nile, ensuring the city and its lush gardens thrived. Two structures epitomized Alexandria's ambition: the Pharos lighthouse and the elaborate royal tombs, including the Sema, housing Alexander's remains. The Pharos, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, stood over 100 meters tall, its beacon guiding ships from miles away. It wasn't just a navigational aid, it was a potent symbol of Alexandrian ingenuity and power. The opulent royal residences and temples dedicated to Greek and Egyptian deities further underscored the city's unique cultural synthesis, a blend of Hellenic and Pharaonic traditions. Even the everyday built environment contributed to this grand tapestry. Public baths, gymnasia, theatres, and grand agoras bustled with activity, reflecting a society that valued physical as well as intellectual cultivation. The materials used, ranging from local limestone to imported marble and granite, spoke of vast resources and a commitment to monumental construction. This meticulously crafted urban environment provided a fitting backdrop for the library, the very aspiration evident in Alexandria's architecture, its scale, its beauty, its integration of functionality and grandeur, mirrored the Ptolemaic ambition to collect, organize, and elevate all human knowledge within the library's walls. The city and its crowning intellectual jewel were inseparable, both powerful manifestations of a golden age. While the popular image of the Library of Alexandria might be its immense collection of scrolls, its true innovative power lay not merely within the stacks, but in the broader institution that housed it, the museum. Far from a passive storage facility, the museum was a dynamic state-sponsored research institute, an ancient think tank that fostered innovation, experimentation, and groundbreaking scientific and philosophical discovery. It was here, in the interplay between accumulated knowledge and active inquiry, that the intellectual future was shaped. The museum provided an unrivaled ecosystem for intellectual pursuits. It consisted of lecture halls, communal dining areas, living quarters for scholars, and specialized facilities. For instance, the presence of astronomical observatories allowed Hipparchus to compile his comprehensive star catalogue and to refine the understanding of Earth's precession. Medical facilities enabled figures like Herophilus and Erasistratus to conduct pioneering anatomical studies and even human dissections, radically advancing knowledge of the human body and challenging centuries of established medical theory. These were not just discussions, these were hands-on empirical investigations driven by curiosity and an unparalleled access to resources. Moreover, the museum served as a hub for technological innovation. Hero of Alexandria, a brilliant engineer and mathematician flourishing likely in the 1st century CE, invented numerous devices, including the Iolipile, the first steam engine, and various automata, demonstrating principles of mechanics, pneumatics, and hydraulics. While the practical application of some of these inventions was limited in ancient times, they show the experimental spirit harbored within the museum. The very atmosphere of the museum, with its diverse scholars from various fields, fostered cross-disciplinary fertilization of ideas. A mathematician might consult an astronomer, who in turn might engage with a philosopher or a medical expert. leading to unexpected insights and new lines of inquiry. This goes far beyond simply reading and interpreting texts. It was an environment designed for active learning, discovery, and the vigorous debate that, as we've explored, defined Alexandrian scholarship. The museum's blend of vast archived knowledge, royal funding, dedicated research facilities, and a diverse resident intellectual community created a unique crucible for the advancement of human understanding, making it arguably the world's first true university-level research institution. Its legacy extends not just through the wisdom preserved in its scrolls, but through the spirit of scientific inquiry and innovation it championed. The story of the Library of Alexandria, so far a chronicle of unparalleled intellectual flourishing and ambition, cannot be separated from the persistent, haunting whispers of its destruction. For centuries, the narrative of a singular, catastrophic fire consuming the entire collection has captivated imaginations, embedding itself deeply within cultural memory. Yet, the reality is far more complex and nuanced, a gradual process of decline rather than an isolated inferno. The most famous and often exaggerated account attributes a major loss of scrolls to Julius Caesar during his Alexandrian War in 48–47 BCE. Ancient historians like Plutarch and Dio Cassius suggest that Caesar, finding himself trapped in the royal palace, ordered the burning of his own ships to prevent them from falling into Ptolemaic hands. The fire, they claim, then spread to the docks and subsequently to storage facilities near the harbour, which contained a significant number of the library's scrolls. Seneca later even suggests 40,000 scrolls were destroyed. However, most modern scholarship views this as a partial destruction, rather than a complete annihilation of the main library or the museum itself. Contemporary accounts by Caesar and Hirtius, his presumed aide, omit any mention of burning the library, focusing instead on military logistics. It's highly probable that some portion of the collection, perhaps scrolls stored in harbour warehouses awaiting shipment or processing, was indeed lost. This event likely marked a turning point, signalling the library's vulnerability to military conflict. Crucially, the library continued to function for centuries after Caesar. Strabo, a geographer writing around 20 BCE, mentions visiting the library and museum as still active centres of learning. Furthermore, later librarians and scholars are documented, indicating an ongoing scholarly community and a substantial collection well into the Roman period. This contradicts the notion of a single, definitive great fire in Caesar's time burning it all down. Instead, the decline of the library and its collections was a more protracted and tragic process. It was a combination of factors: civil strife, neglect by later Roman emperors less invested in its upkeep, and ultimately, a series of smaller, cumulative destructions. The image of a single cataclysmic blaze offers a dramatic, albeit misleading, simplification of a gradual erosion of a priceless intellectual heritage. This prolonged decline, punctuated by various destructive events, paints a more accurate, and perhaps even more sorrowful, picture of a dream slowly fading rather than abruptly ending. Despite the shadows cast by alleged fires and political turmoil, the Library of Alexandria, even after events like Caesar's Alexandrian War, displayed remarkable resilience. The narrative of progressive decline, often punctuated by isolated incidents, also includes periods of deliberate rebuilding and continued intellectual vigor. The indomitable spirit of scholarship persisted, even as the broader political landscape shifted. Historical evidence indicates that while Caesar's conflict likely damaged peripheral collections or warehouses, the main museum and library continued to operate. Following this period, Mark Antony is said to have gifted Cleopatra the entire collection of 200,000 scrolls from the Library of Pergamum, a symbolic, if partial, attempt to replenish the Alexandrian collection and restore its prestige. This act, whether fully realized or partially implemented, underscores an ongoing recognition of the library's importance and efforts to sustain it. Furthermore, the daughter library, or Serapeum, which housed a significant collection and functioned as a public library in addition to its religious function, became increasingly vital in later centuries. It served as a robust secondary collection and continued to collect and preserve texts. Scholars such as Porphyry in the 3rd century CE and Theon of Alexandria in the 4th century CE are known to have worked and taught in Alexandria, demonstrating the continued presence of a robust scholarly tradition. Hypatia, the renowned female philosopher and mathematician, taught in Alexandria in the early 5th century CE, attracting students from across the Mediterranean. This continuous intellectual presence confirms that Alexandrian scholarship, though perhaps not at its peak, was far from extinct. The Roman emperors, while not always as generous as their Ptolemaic predecessors, still provided some level of patronage. Libraries were prestigious institutions, and even provincial governors recognized their value. The continuity of scribal work, as discussed earlier, suggests an ongoing effort to copy and preserve texts, battling the natural decay of papyrus. The very act of this daily copying was a testament to the resilience of scholarship, a quiet, persistent effort to safeguard knowledge against the ravages of time and the vagaries of political events. Therefore, while the Great Fire narrative is compelling, it obscures a more complex truth. The library's immense legacy wasn't extinguished in a single moment. It endured through successive periods of damage and renewal, adapting to changing circumstances and continuing to serve as a vital, if diminished, center of learning for centuries. The commitment to scholarship, even amid destruction, highlights an enduring human drive to preserve and advance knowledge, a drive that continued to burn brightly in Alexandria long after its initial golden age. Despite moments of resilience and efforts at rebuilding, the ultimate fate of the Library of Alexandria was a slow, inexorable decline, a gradual erosion rather than an abrupt catastrophe. The overwhelming weight of centuries, marked by shifting political landscapes, socio-religious upheavals, and the relentless march of time, ultimately chipped away at its foundations, leading to the loss of an irreplaceable proportion of ancient knowledge. The transition from a Hellenistic kingdom under the Ptolemies to a Roman province was a significant turning point. While some Roman emperors, like Augustus, showed an interest in Alexandrian scholarship, the direct, lavish patronage of the Ptolemies was never fully replicated. Funding for the museum and library likely decreased, making it harder to sustain the large staff of scholars and scribes necessary for active collection and preservation. Roman politics focused more on military might and imperial administration, and less on fostering a universal center for speculative inquiry. Internal Roman strife also played a role. The 3rd century CE was a period of immense instability, with frequent civil wars, economic disruption, and changing imperial leadership. Alexandria, as a major city, often found itself caught in these conflicts. Military actions would inevitably disrupt academic life, damage infrastructure, and could lead to sporadic destruction of collections. The triumvirate period and later crises certainly took their toll. Furthermore, the rise of Christianity brought new ideological challenges. As the Roman Empire embraced Christianity and suppressed pagan practices, institutions closely associated with the Hellenistic philosophical tradition, like the museum and its library, often found themselves under suspicion or direct hostility. The Serapeum, which by the late 4th century CE housed a substantial portion of the remaining Alexandrian collection, became a flashpoint. In 391 CE, Emperor Theodosius I issued decrees against pagan temples. The Serapeum, a temple to Serapis, was destroyed by a Christian mob led by Patriarch Theophilus, and while contemporary accounts detail the destruction of the temple, the fate of its library collection is debated. Some scholars argue the books were systematically burned. Others suggest they were dispersed, stolen, or simply allowed to decay amidst the chaos. This confluence of factors, diminished patronage, political instability, and ideological conflict, created an environment where the proactive maintenance and expansion that had defined the library's golden age became increasingly difficult. Scrolls, made of fragile papyrus, required constant care, recopying, and organization. Without dedicated resources, even without a single dramatic fire, large portions of the collection would simply have succumbed to neglect, pests, and the sheer passage of time. The grand institution, once a beacon, slowly faded. The erosion of knowledge, a consequence of a changing world, no longer able or willing to sustain its immense intellectual burden. As the centuries wore on, the once vibrant halls of the Library of Alexandria, along with the adjacent museum, began to fall silent. The intellectual hum that once permeated its spaces, the passionate debates, the scratch of 1,000 pens, slowly faded into an echoing quiet. The institution that had been the epicenter of ancient knowledge became, in its final chapters, a ghost of its former glory, its magnificent collection dwindling to a shadow of its former self. The decisive blow to the library's remnants and the final end for the museum, as a functioning institution, is often debated. But by the mid-4th century CE, its active life was undeniably ebbing. The shift in Roman power to Constantinople diminished Alexandria's administrative and cultural importance. The rise of new religious orthodoxies, particularly triumphant Christianity, grew increasingly intolerant of pagan learning. Education increasingly moved into ecclesiastical institutions, valuing theological texts over the vast secular and philosophical works of the Hellenistic age. The destruction of the Serapeum in 391 CE, which, according to some accounts, housed a significant portion of the remaining Alexandrian collection, was a symbolic and probably substantive end. While the extent of the document destruction is debated, it signified a complete institutional shift. The Serapeum was not just a temple, it was a library and a place of learning for centuries. Its obliteration by an angry Christian mob represented a clear break with the Hellenistic intellectual tradition it embodied. By the 5th century CE, detailed accounts of the library as a central, functioning institution largely cease. The famed teaching of Hypatia in Alexandria in the early 5th century, a last beacon of Hellenistic scholarship, occurred at a time when the broader museum was likely defunct, its philosophical and scientific research largely abandoned. Her tragic murder in 415 CE by a Christian mob further underscores the rising religious fervor and intolerance that proved antithetical to the secular, pluralistic inquiry that had allowed the library to flourish. The Arab conquest of Alexandria in 642 CE presents a final, widely disputed narrative. while various accounts claim the Caliph Umar ordered the burning of any remaining books deemed contradictory to the Quran, placing the scrolls to fuel the city's baths for months. Most modern historians consider this account to be a later embellishment, likely a propaganda piece from the 12th century. The reality is that by the 7th century, any significant remnants of the Great Library's collection would have already been largely gone, dispersed, or decayed over centuries of neglect and incremental destruction. The silence that descended upon the Library of Alexandria was not the dramatic quiet of a sudden death, but the profound stillness of long-term abandonment and the slow erosion of a legacy. It stands as a stark reminder of how even the most ambitious and precious human achievements can be undone, not always by fire and sword, but by the gradual indifference of changing values, the neglect of resources, and the passage of time. A void was left, a vast amount of knowledge irreplaceable, leaving us to wonder what else the ancients knew. As the grand narrative of the Library of Alexandria draws to its close, its decline often overshadows the dedicated efforts of individuals who, against increasingly formidable odds, strove to preserve its treasures. The human toll was immense, measured not only in lost texts, but in the lives of scholars, scribes, and librarians who fought a losing battle against neglect, political upheaval, and ideological shifts. These were the guardians of knowledge, whose stories offer a poignant counterpoint to the broader strokes of destruction. One must consider the succession of head librarians, men like Zenodotus, Callimachus, Apollonius of Rhodes, Eratosthenes, Aristophanes of Byzantium, and Aristarchus of Samothrace. These weren't mere administrators. They were towering intellectuals, many of whom dedicated their entire lives to curating, editing, and expanding the collection. Their work in cataloguing, textual criticism, and ensuring the accurate replication of scrolls was a Herculean task requiring profound scholarly depth and immense organizational skill. Each of them, in their time, acted as a bulwark against loss, continually striving to maintain the library's vitality. Beyond the named librarians, countless unnamed scribes spent their lives meticulously copying and translating texts, often under challenging conditions. Imagine the quiet dedication required in those scriptoria, understanding that their precise handiwork was the only guarantee against a text vanishing forever. These individuals, often unsung, formed the labor force of knowledge preservation, their work directly combating the natural decay of papyrus and the inevitable errors introduced by repeated transcription. Perhaps the most tragic figures are those who witnessed the library's decline firsthand, striving to salvage what they could. Hypatia of Alexandria, a brilliant Neoplatonist philosopher, astronomer, and mathematician, serves as a powerful symbol of this struggle. Living in the early 5th century CE, long after the library's golden age, and likely after the main museum had ceased to function, she taught, wrote commentaries, and attracted students from across the Roman world. Her life was a testament to the enduring appeal of Hellenistic learning, even as it was increasingly threatened by Christian intolerance. Her brutal murder in 415 CE, attributed to a Christian mob, is a stark and sorrowful marker of the human cost of ideological conflict, directly impacting the continuation of the Alexandrian scholarly tradition. These individuals, from the meticulous first librarians to the later scholars like Hypatia, represent the human spirit's unwavering commitment to knowledge. They understood the fragility of recorded wisdom and the immense effort required to sustain it. Their lives, often spent in quiet dedication or, tragically, cut short by forces beyond their control, underscored the profound personal investment in what we now see as one of humanity's greatest intellectual projects. Their efforts stand as a somber reminder of what was lost, and a powerful testament to the enduring value of striving to preserve knowledge. Imagine a quiet, dimly lit room, centuries after the library's zenith. The air is thick with dust, the scent of decaying papyrus faint but persistent. A lone scribe, perhaps old and weary, hunches over a worn desktop, the rhythmic scratch of his reed pen on a fragile scroll barely audible. This isn't the bustling scriptorium of the Golden Age, filled with dozens of busy hands, but a scene from the library's final twilight. This silent act, the last scribe's hand, symbolizes the slow, poignant expiration of an institution that once held the sum of human knowledge. There isn't a single documented last entry or last scribe in the historical record, but the image powerfully encapsulates the final stages of the library's journey. As funding dwindled, as the constant struggle against decay intensified, and as scholarly pursuits waned, the production of new copies and the maintenance of old ones would have become increasingly sporadic. Each scribe who ceased their work, each scroll that crumbled irrevocably, represented a small, incremental step towards oblivion. The process wasn't instantaneous. It was a fading echo. Critical mass was vital for an institution like the library. Once the influx of new materials slowed, once the rigorous cataloguing and textual criticism became less common, the collection would effectively begin to stagnate and then recede. Without continuous scholarly engagement to identify, repair, and reproduce texts, the natural forces of deterioration would inevitably claim more and more of the fragile papyrus. The last scribe's hand represents this shift from active preservation to passive degradation. The lack of consistent, robust institutional support meant that knowledge was increasingly decentralized and fragmented. What survived often did so through the sheer luck of being copied and carried away by private individuals or finding a new home in smaller local libraries or religious institutions. The collective universal ideal of bringing all human thought under one roof, so brilliantly conceived by the Ptolemies, ultimately proved unsustainable against the fragmenting forces of a changing world. The final entry wasn't a dramatic inscription on a scroll, but the slow, heavy silence that eventually replaced the once vibrant hum of intellectual activity. It was the moment when the last dedicated hand put down its pen, knowing that the vast majority of what lay around them would eventually turn to dust. The tragedy of the Library of Alexandria isn't just the loss of specific scrolls, but the loss of that unparalleled center of comprehensive knowledge, the collective memory of humanity, meticulously built and then slowly, silently abandoned. With the last scribe's hand fallen silent, we confront the profound and lasting impact of the Library of Alexandria's dissolution. The unbearable lightness of being, a phrase that here signifies the intangible yet devastating loss of collective human memory. This wasn't merely the destruction of buildings or even just scrolls. It was the obliteration of vast swathes of human achievement. A dark era where the compiled wisdom and triumphs of ancient civilizations were, for all intents and purposes, unwritten from history. The immediate consequence of the library's decline was the cessation of cross-disciplinary research and the synthesis of knowledge that had been its hallmark. When a significant portion of texts on, say, ancient Persian history or Babylonian astronomy disappeared, there was no centralized repository to re-access them. Scholars in later periods, therefore, often had to start from scratch, or worse, their theories were built upon incomplete or flawed understandings. The intellectual progress that had been accelerating during the Hellenistic period was severely arrested, if not entirely reversed in many fields. Consider the sheer volume and diversity of what was lost. We know from fragments and later references that the library housed complete works of philosophers whose names we barely remember, detailed histories of civilizations for which no other records exist, comprehensive medical treatises, and advanced mathematical solutions. For example, we possess only a fraction of Aristotle's prodigious output, and even less of the works of his many students and commentators. We have references to plays, poems, and epic sagas that defined entire literary movements, now vanished. Each lost scroll represents not just a text, but a perspective, a discovery, an argument, a creative expression that can never be fully recovered. This loss created informational voids that have plagued historians and scientists ever since. The Dark Ages in Europe, for instance, were in part dark due to a profound disconnect from the intellectual heritage preserved in Alexandria. While some knowledge was transmitted through Byzantium and the Islamic world, much was simply gone. The human ability to build upon previous generations' achievements was severely hampered, leading to centuries of rediscovery and slower progress. This lightness of being refers to the absence of that accumulated weight of knowledge. We, as modern humans, cannot fully grasp the extent of what we do not know, because the records themselves are gone. The grand project of the library was to compile all past and present knowledge to inform the future. Its disappearance means that our understanding of antiquity is inherently incomplete, filtered through a handful of surviving texts, leaving us to forever speculate about the intellectual giants and masterpieces that once illuminated the ancient world from the shelves of Alexandria. Though physically vanished, the Library of Alexandria casts long echoes in the abyss, its absence and its former glory continuing to shape our understanding of history, knowledge preservation, and the very nature of intellectual endeavor. The lingering impact of this vanished treasure resonates deeply, prompting both lament for what was lost and inspiration for what could be. The profound loss represents a stark historical lesson in the fragility of knowledge. It highlights the critical importance of institutions dedicated to preserving, organizing, and disseminating information. Without such efforts, knowledge is not self-sustaining. It is vulnerable to political upheaval, ideological suppression, and the simple ravages of time. This realization has profoundly influenced subsequent attempts at constructing large-scale repositories of knowledge, from medieval monastic libraries to modern national archives and digital databases. We strive to catalogue and back up our information precisely because we understand the catastrophic precedent set by Alexandria. Conversely, the idea of the Library of Alexandria remains a powerful symbol. It represents the utopian ideal of universal knowledge, a place where all human thought, regardless of origin, could be gathered and debated. This ideal continues to inspire projects. The modern Bibliotheca Alexandrina, inaugurated in 2002, stands as a direct homage to its ancient predecessor. It embodies a contemporary aspiration to recreate a global hub of learning and intercultural dialogue, reflecting a modern commitment to universal access to knowledge in the digital age. The library's legacy also lives on in the very methodologies it pioneered. The critical philology, systematic cataloguing, like Callimachus and Pinakes, and textual criticism developed by Alexandrian scholars, laid foundational frameworks for modern literary scholarship, bibliography, and library science. While the physical scrolls are gone, the intellectual tools forged in Alexandria continue to be used today to analyze and understand what remains of ancient literature. Ultimately, the story of the Library of Alexandria serves as a powerful cautionary tale and an enduring source of inspiration. It is a testament to humanity's boundless capacity for intellectual creation and an equally somber reminder of knowledge's profound fragility. The echoes of its vanished treasures challenge us to actively safeguard our collective memory, to foster open inquiry, and to recognize that the pursuit of understanding is an ongoing, fragile endeavor, requiring constant vigilance and dedicated support. The abyss of what we don't know reminds us of the light that once shone so brightly. Despite the tragic loss of the vast majority of the Library of Alexandria's collection, its legacy endures not only through its symbolic power and the methodologies it pioneered, but also through tantalizing glimmers of the lost. These are fragments, references, and tales embedded in later texts that offer us fleeting glimpses into the unimaginable wealth of knowledge that once resided within its walls, piecing together a mosaic of what might have been. Consider the Pnyx of Callimachus, the monumental bibliographic catalogue itself. While the catalogue itself is lost, references and fragments survive, allowing scholars to reconstruct aspects of its structure and scope. We know it categorized authors and works by genre, providing biographical details and incipits, opening lines. This provides direct evidence of the library's systematic organization and the sheer volume of material it indexed. It's from such scattered mentions that we learn of authors and texts that would otherwise be utterly unknown. Beyond catalogue information, direct quotations and summaries from Alexandrian scholars offer invaluable insights. For instance, the works of Hero of Alexandria, the engineer, often refer to earlier scientific principles and works that were presumably accessible in the library. Similarly, Ptolemy's Almagest, while a brilliant work in its own right, frequently cites and builds upon earlier astronomical observations and theories that must have been extensively documented within the Alexandrian collection. His use of earlier Greek, and possibly even Babylonian, astronomical data allowed him to create a comprehensive model of the universe. Literary criticism also provides a window. For example, substantial portions of the works of Greek dramatists like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides survive today because Alexandrian scholars diligently collected, edited, and commented upon them. Without their efforts, many of these masterpieces might have been lost entirely. Even today, philologists meticulously reconstruct ancient texts by comparing later copies, relying on the textual lineages and critical apparatus established by the scholars of Alexandria. Perhaps the most poignant glimmers come from direct references to works now entirely vanished. We learn of complete histories by figures like Manetho, offering insights into ancient Egyptian chronology, now known only through fragments quoted by later authors. We hear of lost plays, epic poems, and philosophical treatises that completed the intellectual tapestry of the ancient world. Each citation, each ancient scholar's lament over a missing text, serves as a haunting reminder of the intellectual universes that once thrived within the library's hallowed halls. These fragments, though meager, are our tangible link to a past intellectual paradise, urging us to imagine the full majesty of what was tragically diminished. While the physical scrolls of the Library of Alexandria largely elude us, our intellectual pursuit of its contents is far from over. Today, scholars embark on a fascinating intellectual endeavor, constructing the imagination's library, a vibrant, albeit speculative, reconstruction of the unseen volumes, This process involves meticulous detective work, analyzing surviving references, and even engaging in informed conjecture to piece together the lost intellectual landscape of antiquity. One primary approach involves cross-referencing ancient citations. Later authors often quoted, summarized, or critiqued works that were undoubtedly present in the Library of Alexandria. By systematically compiling these references, researchers can map out a ghost catalogue of books mentioned but no longer extant. For example, we know Hipparchus wrote a multi-volume work criticizing Eratosthenes' geography. While Hipparchus's work is lost, the fact that he extensively criticized Eratosthenes tells us about the detailed geographical debates and the available source material within the library. Furthermore, archaeological discoveries of papyrus fragments, though rarely from Alexandria itself, offer valuable insights into the kinds of texts and scholarly practices that might have been prevalent. The Oxyrhynchus papyri, discovered in Egypt for instance, contain thousands of Greek papyrus fragments, including comedies, historical works, and philosophical treatises previously thought lost. While these weren't necessarily from the Alexandrian library, they illustrate the broader intellectual world the library served and what was being copied and studied. Imagine a digital project today that compiles every known ancient reference to a lost work, mapping its author, genre, and likely subject matter. This is, in effect, what modern Hellenistic scholars do. They reconstruct the intellectual network of the past, understanding that the absence of a text is often as telling as its presence. The gaps in our knowledge are not simply empty spaces, but indicators of what once was, allowing us to ask more precise questions about the scope and depth of ancient learning. This reconstruction is vital not just for historical completeness, but for understanding the development of Western thought. Many scientific and philosophical ideas that emerged centuries later might have had earlier, sophisticated precedents within the lost Alexandrian volumes. By reconstructing the imagination's library, we gain a deeper appreciation for the ancient mind and the true costs of intellectual loss. It encourages us to constantly question our current knowledge, recognizing that what we hold dear today might be but a fraction of a grander, more intricate tapestry woven by our distant ancestors. While the imagination's library offers a conceptual reconstruction of what was lost, a more tangible endeavor drives scholars to this day. The scholar's quest, the relentless search for physical traces of the library and its contents in the shifting sands of time. This isn't just an academic exercise, it's a testament to the enduring allure of Alexandria and the hope that, somewhere, a hidden cache of ancient knowledge might still exist, waiting to be rediscovered. Archaeological excavations in Alexandria have, over the past century, yielded significant findings that offer glimpses into the physical reality of the ancient city and, by extension, the museum. While no definitive ruins directly identified as the Great Library have been uncovered, the groundwork of the royal quarter has been extensively explored by teams from various nations. French and Polish missions, in particular, unearthed much of the ancient city's topography, including impressive public buildings, colonnaded streets, and bath complexes that attest to Alexandria's grandeur and its layout as described by ancient sources. Underwater archaeology has also played a crucial role. The submerged ruins of the ancient royal palaces and port facilities, including remnants of the Pharos lighthouse, discovered off the coast of Alexandria, confirm ancient accounts of the city's scale and opulence. These underwater sites, though not directly yielding library scrolls, provide context, helping scholars better understand the environment in which the museum and library once thrived. They reinforce the idea of a vibrant monumental city capable of housing such an intellectual marvel. The search for texts also extends beyond Alexandrian soil. Scholars meticulously examine papyri and parchments found in other parts of Egypt, like the aforementioned Oxyrhynchus papyri. These discoveries, often found in less humid desert conditions that favored preservation, provide a material understanding of ancient book production and what kind of texts circulated in the broader Greco-Roman world. Each fragment, even if not from the library itself, helps inform our understanding of the textual landscape that the library would have dominated. This ongoing quest is driven by the tantalizing possibility of a major discovery. Imagine unearthing a sealed chamber, perhaps a scholar's private collection, containing works directly from the library's distribution, or even an unknown cache within the city's ancient ruins. Such a find would be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in history. Until then, the scholar's quest continues, fueled by both scientific rigor and a profound sense of historical wonder, as researchers patiently comb through every shred of evidence, hoping to unearth another whisper of the lost in the vast sands of time. The enduring mystery of the Library of Alexandria extends to its physical remains. For archaeologists, the challenge isn't simply finding structures, it's engaging in what we term the archaeology of absence, piecing together evidence of something largely gone, digging for clues in Alexandria's densely layered ruins, perpetually searching for echoes of its lost intellectual heart. The original site of the Great Library and its associated museum was located within the Royal Quarter, or Bruchion, a vast and opulent district that once dominated the ancient city. Unfortunately, significant portions of the Bruchion now lie submerged beneath the modern city of Alexandria and harbour. This overlay of modern development makes large-scale, systematic archaeological excavation incredibly difficult, if not impossible, in many key areas. Researchers are often limited to small rescue digs necessitated by modern construction, or meticulous explorations of areas that are still accessible. Despite these challenges, archaeological activity has indeed unearthed relevant findings. Within the general vicinity of where the museum was believed to be, archaeologists have uncovered foundations of large public buildings, colonnades, and administrative structures dating to the Ptolemaic and Roman periods. While none have been definitively identified as the Great Library, they provide crucial context for understanding the monumental scale and architectural style of the institutions within the Royal Quarter. For example, discoveries of mosaic floors and large halls, consistent with an academic complex, offer tantalizing hints. Perhaps the closest we've come to identifying a library structure within the city is from the Roman theatre archaeological site. In 2004, a Polish-Egyptian team discovered 13 lecture halls, complete with benches and a central podium, within the ruins of the Roman baths complex in Com el-Dika. Dating to the Roman period, 4th to 6th centuries CE, these halls are believed to have been part of a university or scholarly institution, possibly the successor to the museum's teaching facilities. While not the Great Library itself, it demonstrates the continued presence of organized higher education in Alexandria long after the traditional accounts of the library's demise. These finds underscore the gradual nature of intellectual decline rather than sudden annihilation. The search continues. Modern technology, including ground-penetrating radar and remote sensing, may one day penetrate the layers of subsequent construction and expose more definitive traces of the Great Library. Until then, the archaeology of absence forces us to interpret fragmentary evidence, piece together a mental map of what existed, and continue to hope that the sands and waters of Alexandria may yet yield more tangible clues to one of history's greatest intellectual enterprises. Beyond the factual accounts and archaeological searches, the Library of Alexandria has transcended its historical reality to become something more, a legend. The birth of a legend describes how its story has evolved through time, becoming a powerful cultural metaphor for intellectual ambition, tragic loss, and humanity's perennial struggle to preserve knowledge. This evolved narrative, often more myth than history, has significantly shaped its enduring impact. The early accounts of its destruction, particularly the Caesar fire narrative, were embellished and exaggerated over centuries. While contemporary sources were more nuanced, later Roman writers like Seneca, 1st century CE, and Aulus Gellius, 2nd century CE, began to quantify the loss in dramatic terms, speaking of 40,000 volumes, or even larger figures being consumed by fire. This transformation from military incident to intellectual catastrophe solidified its place in the popular imagination. Later, the 7th century Arab conquest provided another potent narrative hook for the library's demise. The story attributed to the 13th century historian Abd al-Latif al-Baghdadi and popularized by figures like Edward Gibbon in the 18th century, describes Caliph Umar allegedly ordering the burning of all remaining books, claiming they were either redundant if they agreed with the Quran, or heretical if they didn't. This dramatic tale, despite modern scholarship largely debunking it as historical fiction, firmly established the image of a fanatical destruction of knowledge, serving various agendas over time. For centuries, it was used to demonize Islamic expansionism, while later it became a symbol of the dangers of religious extremism. These narratives, whether true or embellished, functioned as powerful cautionary tales or cultural touchstones. The library became the archetypal symbol of lost knowledge, a poignant reminder of humanity's intellectual fragility. It served as a narrative vehicle to lament the decline of classical antiquity and the rise of new, often perceived as less enlightened, eras. Its perceived obliteration created a romanticized vision of a golden age of learning violently extinguished. This legendary status, while obscuring some of the complex historical realities of its gradual decline, has arguably amplified its cultural significance. The idea of the Library of Alexandria, rather than its precise historical details, has become a potent symbol in art, literature, and even modern scientific endeavors. It continues to inspire awe and a sense of profound loss, driving the ongoing fascination with this truly unique institution. The legend, in many ways, has outshone the history, making the Library of Alexandria not just an ancient building, but a timeless story. As the legendary narrative of the Library of Alexandria continues to unfold, its most crucial role might be as a profound moral of the tale, offering invaluable warnings and lessons for future generations. This isn't merely an academic exercise in historical reconstruction. It's a vital reflection on the enduring challenges of knowledge, power, and human progress. Perhaps the foremost lesson is the inherent fragility of knowledge. The story of the library vividly demonstrates that even the most monumental repositories of human thought are not immune to destruction. Whether through catastrophic fires, deliberate acts of iconoclasm, political neglect, or simply the slow decay of time and materials, accumulated wisdom can be lost. This underscores the perpetual need for active preservation, continuous curation, and redundant storage to safeguard our collective intellectual heritage. Our modern digital age, while seemingly robust, still faces new challenges like data rot, server failures, and digital obsolescence, making the Alexandrian lesson as relevant as ever. Secondly, the library's demise serves as a potent warning against ideological intolerance and the suppressing effects of narrow-mindedness. The periods of decline and destruction often coincided with significant socio-religious shifts and conflicts, where the open, pluralistic inquiry championed by the library clashed with rigid dogmas. The tragic fates of scholars like Hypatia stand as stark reminders of the human toll, when intellectual freedom is sacrificed at the altar of political or religious agendas. True progress, the library's story suggests, thrives only in an environment that embraces diverse perspectives and critical inquiry. Furthermore, the tale highlights the critical importance of sustained patronage and enlightened leadership. The library's flourishing under the early Ptolemies was a direct result of their strategic investment in knowledge. Its subsequent decline correlates strongly with the withdrawal of such support and the rise of rulers less committed to intellectual pursuits. This implies that societies must actively value and continuously fund institutions dedicated to fundamental research and education, not just when they seem immediately profitable, but for the long-term benefit of civilization. Finally, the Library of Alexandria teaches us about the enduring human desire for universal knowledge. Its very conception was an expression of humanity's boundless curiosity and its aspiration to collect, organize, and synthesize all known information. This ambition, though tragically thwarted in ancient Alexandria, continues to inspire today's global projects to map the human genome, explore the cosmos, and build vast digital libraries. The void left by Alexandria compels us to keep searching, keep questioning, and keep building, ensuring that our future generations inherit not an abyss, but an ever-expanding horizon of understanding. The Phantom Library, therefore, stands not just as a monument to loss, but as an eternal call to foster, protect, and advance knowledge. Despite its tragic end, the Library of Alexandria carved an indelible mark on the course of intellectual history, bearing a massive burden of legacy that shaped subsequent scholarship for millennia. Its innovative methodologies, critical approaches, and the very concept of a universal knowledge repository profoundly influenced how knowledge was produced, organized, and transmitted long after its own decline. One of the most significant legacies was in the field of textual criticism and philology. The Alexandrian scholars established practices for standardizing, editing, and commenting on classical Greek texts. Before their efforts, many major works, like Homer's epics, existed in various, often conflicting versions. Scholars like Zenodotus and Aristarchus meticulously compared manuscripts, identified spurious passages, and created critical editions that became the accepted standard. This rigorous approach to textual integrity laid the groundwork for all future classical scholarship and set a remarkably high bar for academic rigor that influenced Byzantine and later European humanists. Furthermore, the very idea of a comprehensive, systematically organized library became an enduring model. While no other ancient library reached its scale, the Alexandrian example inspired the creation of numerous smaller, yet still significant libraries throughout the Roman Empire and later in the Byzantine, and crucially, the Islamic worlds. The Abbasid Caliphate's House of Wisdom in Baghdad, a center for translation and scholarship from the 8th to 13th centuries, CE, inherited much of its intellectual spirit, if not direct methodology, from the Alexandrian precedent. Its focus on collecting, translating, and studying texts from diverse cultures directly mirrors the Ptolemaic vision. The scientific and mathematical traditions fostered in Alexandria during its golden age also cast a long shadow. Euclidean geometry and Ptolemaic astronomy, both products of Alexandrian scholarship, formed the bedrock of Western scientific thought for over 1,000 years. Even centuries later, Renaissance scholars and Enlightenment scientists had to contend with, elaborate upon, or eventually supersede the Alexandrian models. The works of figures like Hero of Alexandria, though sometimes preserved only in fragments or later summaries, show the advanced level of engineering and mechanics achieved, influencing later innovators. The burden of its legacy is not just about what it lost, but what it inspired. The library's foundational work in organizing, preserving, and critically examining texts created an intellectual infrastructure upon which much of subsequent European and Islamic scholarship was built. It set a standard for what a dedicated research institution could achieve, challenging future generations to aspire to the same level of intellectual ambition and systematic inquiry. Even in its absence, the Library of Alexandria's profound influence on later intellectual traditions is undeniable, like the DNA of knowledge, subtly coded into subsequent academic works. By carefully examining later writings, we can identify direct Alexandrian contributions and the enduring impact of its scholarly methods and scientific discoveries, proving that much endured even after the physical library faded. A prime example lies in the preservation of classical Greek literature. The Alexandrian scholars did not just collect, they edited, commented upon, and created standardized versions of texts. Works of Homer, the Athenian tragedians, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and comedic playwrights, Aristophanes, survived to a large extent due to the critical mass of copies and the philological work done in Alexandria. Later Byzantium, and subsequently the European Renaissance, largely inherited these Alexandrian edited texts, making the library an indispensable link in the chain of transmission. In the sciences, the influence is even more direct. Ptolemy's Almagest, written in Alexandria in the 2nd century CE, codified Hellenistic astronomy and became the standard treatise on the subject for over 1,400 years. Its comprehensive catalogue of stars and mathematical models of planetary motion were based on observations and theories meticulously compiled and developed within the Alexandrian tradition. Similarly, Euclid's Elements, the foundational text for geometry, was a product of early Alexandrian scholarship. Archimedes, while not an Alexandrian resident, was deeply connected to its intellectual community, and much of his work would have been studied and preserved there. These texts, foundational to mathematical and scientific understanding for centuries, carry the clear DNA of Alexandrian inquiry. Furthermore, the anatomical and medical advancements pioneered by Herophilus and Erasistratus in Alexandria, challenging previous theoretical approaches with empirical dissection, left an indelible mark. Though their original works are lost, their methods and findings were incorporated into later medical encyclopedias and practices, influencing Galen and subsequent medical traditions for over a millennium. The transmission of this Alexandrian DNA was not always direct. Much of it filtered through Byzantine scholarship and, crucially, through the vibrant intellectual centers of the Islamic world. Arabic scholars translated, commented upon, and preserved countless Greek texts, many of which had been curated and studied in Alexandria. These translations later made their way back to Europe during the High Middle Ages and Renaissance, sparking renewed interest in classical knowledge. Thus, while the physical Library of Alexandria is gone, its intellectual spirit and concrete contributions resonate through the very fabric of our ongoing pursuit of knowledge. It stands as a testament to the profound and long-lasting ripple effects of a dedicated center of learning, reminding us that even perceived destruction cannot entirely erase the profound impact of truly groundbreaking thought. The enduring power of the Library of Alexandria's ideal resonates deeply in the modern era, culminating in a spectacular digital phoenix, a contemporary attempt to recreate the ancient dream of universal knowledge in a new format. This phoenix is the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, a stunning architectural marvel inaugurated in 2002, standing proudly on the presumed site of its ancient predecessor, aiming to reclaim Alexandria's intellectual heritage. Designed by the Norwegian architectural firm Snøhetta, the new Library of Alexandria is a bold statement. Its distinctive disc-like shape, rising from the earth at an angle, evokes an ancient Egyptian sun disk, symbolizing the city's unique blend of cultures and its enduring quest for enlightenment. The building's exterior is etched with characters from over 100 different scripts, a visual celebration of linguistic and cultural diversity, echoing the ancient library's ambition to collect knowledge from every nation. The Bibliotheca Alexandrina is far more than just a public library. It is a multifaceted cultural complex designed to serve as a hub of learning for Egypt, the Middle East, and the world, much like its ancient namesake. It houses a main reading room capable of accommodating thousands of users, with shelving for 8 million books. But its vision extends beyond printed matter. Integral to its modern mission is the digital component. The library actively engages in digitalization projects, aiming to preserve and make accessible not only its own growing collection, but also significant cultural heritage materials from the region. It hosts special collections, including rare books, manuscripts, and microfilms, reflecting centuries of intellectual production. Beyond its core library functions, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina encompasses several museums: the Antiquities Museum, the Manuscript Museum, and the History of Science Museum, art galleries, a planetarium, and specialized libraries for the visually impaired and for children. It also serves as host to the Internet Archive's first international mirror, providing open access to billions of web pages and digitized books, directly embodying the ancient aspiration of universal accessibility to knowledge in a truly contemporary way. The new library stands as a powerful symbol of recommitment to a legacy of scholarship. It acknowledges the historical loss while simultaneously asserting a contemporary vision for the future of knowledge. By embracing both traditional and digital media, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina strives to be a living, evolving institution that serves as a beacon of learning and intercultural dialogue, proving that the dream first envisioned by the Ptolemies can indeed rise again, transformed and reimagined for the 21st century. The contemporary Bibliotheca Alexandrina stands not merely as an architectural marvel, but as a vibrant testament to the enduring power of the Library of Alexandria's original vision. More than a memorial, the new Bibliotheca Alexandrina functions as a crucial bridge between past and future, employing cutting-edge technology to fulfill an ancient dream of universal knowledge in a rapidly evolving world. Its operations reflect a deep commitment to both preservation and innovation. Unlike the ancient library, which focused almost exclusively on physical scrolls, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina embraces the full spectrum of modern information storage and dissemination. Its extensive digital library contains digitized versions of rare manuscripts, historical documents, and contemporary research, ensuring accessibility to a global audience. The library also hosts the first major copy of the Internet Archive, mirroring billions of web pages and digitized books, effectively creating a vast digital repository of human knowledge that transcends physical boundaries. The Bibliotheca Alexandrina is not solely an archive. It is a dynamic center for cultural exchange and intellectual dialogue. It organizes numerous international conferences, symposia, and cultural events, fostering discussions across diverse fields of knowledge. Through partnerships with universities and research institutions worldwide, it actively promotes collaborative scholarship, mirroring the ancient museum's role as a hub for international academics. Special programs cater to children and young adults, nurturing the next generation of readers and researchers. Furthermore, its commitment to specialized collections and research facilities is noteworthy. The Manuscript Museum actively works to preserve and digitize rare historical manuscripts. The Antiquities Museum, located on site, showcases findings from underwater archaeology in Alexandria's harbour, connecting the new library directly to the physical heritage of the ancient city. The History of Science Museum celebrates scientific achievements throughout the region's history, recognizing the profound scientific tradition fostered by the ancient museum. In essence, the new Bibliotheca Alexandrina is a living embodiment of the ideals that underpinned its ancient predecessor. The systematic collection of diverse knowledge, its preservation for future generations, and the creation of an environment conducive to intellectual exchange and discovery. It confronts the tragedy of the past not with lament, but with a proactive, forward-looking determination to bridge cultural divides and illuminate the path to future understanding. This modern institution ensures that the dream woven millennia ago on the shores of Alexandria continues to inspire and inform, perpetually building a bridge between the wisdom of ages past and the accelerating knowledge of tomorrow. The tragic loss of the ancient Library of Alexandria serves as a poignant historical precedent, lending a deep significance to the curator's dilemma faced by modern institutions: how best to preserve knowledge in the rapidly evolving digital age. While the mediums have changed from fragile papyrus to ephemeral pixels, the fundamental challenges of safeguarding humanity's intellectual heritage remain strikingly similar. The digital revolution has brought unprecedented opportunities for information storage and access. Unlike ancient scrolls, which were susceptible to physical decay, fire, and limited access, digital files can be replicated endlessly, shared globally almost instantaneously, and stored in minuscule physical spaces. The dream of universal knowledge, once confined to the philosophical ambitions of the Ptolemies, now seems technologically achievable. Projects like the Internet Archive and the vast digital collections of institutions worldwide are, in essence, modern libraries of Alexandria, striving to capture and preserve the sum of human output. However, the digital landscape also presents unique and complex preservation challenges that are, in some ways, more insidious than those faced by ancient librarians. The primary concern is digital obsolescence. Technology evolves at an exponential rate. File formats, software and hardware become outdated with alarming speed, rendering older digital information unreadable or inaccessible within a matter of years, not centuries. Imagine trying to access a document saved on a floppy disk from the 1980s without compatible hardware, or trying to open a file created in proprietary software that no longer exists. This bit rot is a silent, pervasive threat far removed from the dramatic imagery of a burning library. Moreover, the sheer volume of digital information, often termed data deluge, makes comprehensive curation and preservation a monumental task. What constitutes valuable knowledge in a sea of billions of web pages, social media posts, and ever-expanding digital archives? The challenge is not just storing data, but developing intelligent systems for selection, categorization, and long-term maintenance. Who decides what gets preserved, and how do we ensure diverse perspectives are not inadvertently excluded? Echoing the ancient library's aim for universality, the curator's dilemma, therefore, is multifaceted. It involves 1. Technological migration. Continuously updating file formats and storage media to ensure data remains accessible across generations of technology. 2. Authentication and integrity. Ensuring that digital content is genuine and has not been altered, a challenge compounded by the ease of digital manipulation. 3. Intellectual property and rights management. Navigating complex legal frameworks around copyright in a global, interconnected digital environment. 4. Funding and sustenance. Like the ancient library, modern digital preservation efforts require immense resources and sustained institutional commitment. The lessons from Alexandria underscore that preservation is an active, ongoing process, not a one-time event. The challenge for digital curators is to foresee and counteract the digital equivalents of fire, neglect, and political instability, ensuring that our current era's vast intellectual output does not become the next great lost library for future generations. Despite the philosophical continuity of seeking universal knowledge, the sensory experience of the modern library stands in stark contrast to its ancient predecessor. Imagine stepping into the ancient Library of Alexandria versus its modern counterpart. The sights, sounds, and even the smells would transport you to vastly different worlds, each reflecting the technology and cultural values of their respective eras. In the ancient library, the overpowering aroma would have been that of papyrus and cedar oil. Papyrus, made from reeds, has an earthy, slightly sweet smell, which would have permeated the air, mingling with the aromatic cedar oil used to preserve the scrolls from insects and moisture. The light would have been dim, relying primarily on natural sunlight streaming through openings or, after dark, the flickering glow of oil lamps. Sounds would have been hushed, consisting of the rustling of papyrus being unrolled, the quiet murmur of scholarly discussion, the rhythmic scratching of scribes' pens on their rolls, and perhaps the distant sounds of the bustling Alexandrian port. Large open spaces would have featured wooden shelving, perhaps reaching high to the ceilings, filled with thousands upon thousands of tightly wound scrolls, each with its small identifying tag. Reading would have been a physically engaged process, requiring both hands, and often done standing or leaning. Now, transport yourself to the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. The dominant scent is likely clean, recycled air, perhaps a faint, crisp smell of new books or cleaning agents. The lighting is bright, a combination of carefully designed natural light flooding in from the immense glass ceiling and sophisticated artificial illumination. The sounds are a low hum of air conditioning, the quiet click of computer keyboards, the gentle whir of digital servers, and the occasional soft whisper of conversation. Instead of rows of scrolls, you see towering stacks of printed books, computer terminals, and digital displays. Reading is often done seated, eyes fixed on a screen, with information almost instantaneously retrievable through sophisticated search algorithms, a far cry from Callimachus's meticulous Pinaques. The modern experience emphasizes accessibility, efficiency, and a controlled environment designed for comfort and extended engagement with digital and print media. The ancient experience was more tactile, more laborious, and arguably even more precious due given the fragility of its medium. These sensory contrasts are not mere superficial differences. They reflect fundamental shifts in technology, resource availability, and societal expectations regarding the acquisition and consumption of knowledge. Yet, underlying both experiences remains the same profound human drive, the insatiable curiosity to learn, to connect with the past, and to build the intellectual future. The enduring allure of the Library of Alexandria stems not just from its physical grandeur or tragic demise, but from the breathtaking ambition that birthed it, the dream of a universal archive, a repository of total knowledge. This aspiration, first kindled on the shores of ancient Egypt, continues to ignite intellectual endeavors today, constantly revisited and reinterpreted through the lens of new technologies and global connectivity. The Ptolemaic vision for the library was truly unprecedented. It aimed to acquire all the books in the world, an idealistic goal that, while never fully achieved, drove an aggressive acquisition policy. Agents were dispatched to purchase texts, ships were searched for scrolls, and even original manuscripts were sometimes confiscated, all in service of this grand ambition. The concept was revolutionary: to centralize and make accessible the cumulative wisdom of humanity, transcending cultural and linguistic barriers. It was an early attempt at what we might today call a global knowledge commons. While the modern era offers unprecedented tools to approach this dream, new challenges emerge alongside new possibilities. The digital age, with the internet and massive processing power, theoretically allows for the creation of an archive that holds virtually all recorded information. Projects like the Internet Archive, Google Books, and various academic repositories are actively working towards this goal, digitizing millions of books, web pages, audio, and video files, striving to capture and preserve the vast and ever-growing ocean of human expression. However, the pursuit of total knowledge today encounters hurdles similar in spirit to those faced in antiquity. Instead of physical limits on storage or transportation, we grapple with information overload and the complexities of categorization. How do we make sense of billions of data points? The meticulous cataloging systems of Callimachus, revolutionary for their time, find their modern parallels in sophisticated algorithms and metadata structures designed to navigate vast digital landscapes. Moreover, the universal aspect remains a philosophical and practical challenge. While digital archives offer global access, issues of digital divide, language barriers, and unequal representation persist. Whose knowledge is prioritized for digitization? How do we ensure that diverse cultural voices are included and made accessible, mirroring the Alexandrian attempt to gather knowledge from Greeks, Persians, Egyptians, and others? The dream of the universal archive is therefore continuously revisited. It reminds us that knowledge is power, and accessibility to it is paramount for progress. The ancient Library of Alexandria set a benchmark for this ambition, and its lingering presence fuels our ongoing quest. prompting us to reflect on both the promise and the perils of attempting to capture the entirety of human intellect. The dream of a universal archive, inherited from the Library of Alexandria, inevitably brings to the forefront a critical and enduring question: the ethics of information. Who controls access to the world's wisdom, and what are the implications of that control? This ancient question, central to the library's initial purpose and eventual fate, resonates with heightened urgency in our interconnected digital age. In ancient Alexandria, access to the library's vast collection was primarily reserved for the resident scholars of the museum and those granted special permission. While the Serapeum likely served a more public function, the Great Library itself was not a public library in the modern sense. This limited access, coupled with the Ptolemies' aggressive acquisition policies, often involving the confiscation of texts, demonstrates an early understanding of knowledge as a form of power, to be consolidated and controlled. The decision of what to collect, what to copy, and who could read it lay firmly with the ruling elite and its appointed intellectual guardians. Today, while the rhetoric often champions open access and the democratization of information, the reality is far more complex. The vast digital repositories and global networks that approximate the Alexandrian ideal raise new ethical dilemmas. 1. Digital divide. Despite the internet, billions still lack access to digital resources, creating new forms of knowledge inequality. Just as not everyone could enter the ancient library, not everyone can access the digital commons. 2. Commercialization of knowledge. Much of the world's scholarly output is housed behind paywalls controlled by academic publishers. This restricts access for individuals and institutions unable to afford expensive subscriptions, effectively privatizing a significant portion of human knowledge. 3. Algorithmic control. Search engines and social media platforms act as algorithmic gatekeepers, determining what information users see. Their proprietary algorithms, driven by commercial interests or political considerations, can shape public discourse and even reinforce existing biases, influencing what becomes visible knowledge. 4. Censorship and surveillance. Governments and powerful entities can exert control over information flows, blocking websites, removing content, or monitoring online activity, echoing ancient acts of intellectual suppression. 5. Authenticity and misinformation. In an age of abundant information, discerning reliable sources from misinformation or disinformation becomes a profound ethical challenge, requiring new forms of critical literacy. The story of the Library of Alexandria, therefore, transcends mere historical fascination. It provides a timeless framework for understanding the ethical responsibilities inherent in curating and disseminating knowledge. The power to collect, preserve, and grant access to information is immense, carrying with it the profound obligation to ensure that the world's wisdom truly serves the broadest possible good, and is not simply consolidated for the benefit of a select few. The library's enduring lesson is that the dream of universal knowledge is perpetually intertwined with the ethical challenge of equitable access and responsible stewardship. The haunting narrative of the Library of Alexandria's gradual demise underscores a fundamental truth: the fragility of memory. Despite our increasingly connected world, where information seems omnipresent, the lessons from Alexandria powerfully remind us why libraries, both physical and digital, continue to matter profoundly. They are not simply buildings or databases. They are critical bastions against the erosion of human knowledge and the guardians of our collective memory. In an age characterized by an overwhelming deluge of information, the very ease of access can create a false sense of security regarding preservation. The Internet, while a powerful tool for dissemination, is inherently ephemeral. Websites disappear, links break, and digital formats become obsolete. Without active, systematic curation and archiving, vast portions of our current digital output could vanish as completely as ancient papyri. This digital dark age is a real concern, echoing the silent, gradual loss that plagued the ancient library. Libraries, conversely, perform the active work of digital preservation, migrating data, converting formats, and continually maintaining digital archives against the relentless march of technological change. Moreover, libraries, particularly public and academic institutions, serve a crucial role in providing curated, reliable information in an era often overwhelmed by misinformation and algorithm-driven content. Unlike the often unfiltered data stream of the Internet, libraries offer expertly selected resources, critical analysis tools, and trained professionals, librarians, who can guide users through the complexities of information literacy. This function is vital for fostering informed citizenry and critical thinking, qualities essential for any thriving society. The physical library also provides a unique, democratic space for learning and community that cannot be replicated online. It is a sanctuary for quiet contemplation, a place for serendipitous discovery, and a hub for intellectual exchange, much like the ancient museum. These spaces foster a sense of shared intellectual endeavor and allow for direct, tangible interaction with physical books and materials, which research suggests enriches learning in different ways than digital consumption. Finally, libraries stand as symbols of enduring human ambition, the desire to collect, organize, and make accessible the sum of human knowledge for the benefit of all. Remembering the Library of Alexandria's fate, its decline due to political instability, neglect, and ideological conflict, highlights the vital importance of continuously supporting and investing in these institutions. They are not relics of the past, but essential infrastructures for the future, safeguarding our collective story and empowering new generations to build upon the wisdom of those who came before. The fragility of memory, then, is not a reason for despair, but a powerful call to action for every connected world citizen. The conversation around the preservation of knowledge inevitably leads us to the human connection to the book, exploring the profound difference between the tangible experience of engaging with physical media and the often ephemeral nature of digital-only content. This contrast, vividly illustrated by comparing the ancient Library of Alexandria to our modern digital realm, highlights why the physical artifact continues to hold a unique and irreplaceable value. Imagine a scholar in ancient Alexandria carefully unrolling a papyrus scroll. The texture of the aged reed, the scent of cedar oil, the calligraphic precision of the scribe's hand, the weight spread across both hands. These were all integral parts of the reading experience. Each scroll was a physical journey through text, each mark a testament to the human labor of its creation. The act of reading was slow, deliberate, and deeply embodied. This tangible interaction fostered a profound respect for the artifact itself, understanding it as a unique and precious vessel of thought. Fast forward to today. Much of our reading is done on screens, tablets, laptops, phones. The text is fluid, endlessly customizable in font and size, searchable, and instantly shareable. It's convenient, efficient, and allows for unprecedented access. However, this digital text often lacks the physical presence, the thingness of a book or scroll. It's often perceived as ephemeral, easily deleted, updated, or lost in the vastness of the internet. The digital experience can be less anchored, less memorable, and more susceptible to distraction. Research suggests that the tangible interaction with physical books contributes to deeper comprehension and retention. The physical act of turning pages, the spatial memory of where information is located on a page, and the absence of digital distractions all play a role. A physical book, with its wear and tear, its marginalia, its dog-eared pages, tells a story beyond its printed words, a narrative of its own journey through time and hands. The loss of the ancient Library of Alexandria was acutely felt precisely because its contents were unique, physical objects. Each scroll represented a singular creation, the disappearance of which left an irreplaceable void. While digital copies can protect against singular physical loss, they cannot perfectly replicate the rich, multi-sensory experience of interacting with an original artifact. The enduring human connection to the physical book, whether a papyrus scroll or a printed volume, underscores its unique role in our cultural and intellectual landscape. It provides a tactile link to history, a physical anchor for thought, and a testament to the enduring power of human creativity, reminding us that while digital access is crucial, the tangible presence of objects of knowledge continues to hold a profound and irreplaceable value in our collective memory. More than 2 millennia after its founding, and centuries after its decline, the Library of Alexandria continues to exert a profound influence, a weight of absence felt across disciplines today. The sheer magnitude of what was lost shapes not only our understanding of antiquity, but also our approach to knowledge itself, constantly reminding us of the fragility of human achievement and the profound impact of informational voids. The most immediate and tangible impact is the gaping holes in our knowledge of the ancient world. Vast swathes of Greek literature, philosophy, history, and science are known only through fragments, tantalizing references in later texts, or through later Byzantine and Arabic summaries. We lack complete works of many significant Hellenistic poets, historians, and playwrights. Think of all the philosophical schools whose nuances are now lost forever because their primary texts vanished. The full scope of ancient scientific and mathematical advancements, though hinted at by figures like Archimedes, remains largely unrecoverable. This intellectual vacuum means that modern scholarship frequently encounters dead ends, forever speculating about alternative paths intellectual history might have taken. Beyond specific texts, the loss represents a disruption in the continuous flow of cumulative knowledge. Each lost work, each lost methodology, meant that subsequent generations had to either rediscover concepts independently or work with an incomplete foundation. This directly contributed to the Dark Ages in Europe, where much of the sophisticated knowledge of classical antiquity was unavailable, leading to a period of intellectual stagnation in certain regions. The rediscovery of even fragments of this lost knowledge, often through Arabic translations, was a major catalyst for the Renaissance, demonstrating the immense value of what had been preserved elsewhere. Furthermore, the story of the Library of Alexandria stands as a powerful cultural and psychological touchstone. It represents the ultimate intellectual tragedy, a cautionary tale about the vulnerability of human intellect to the forces of war, neglect, and intolerance. This narrative has seeped into our collective consciousness, influencing our anxieties about the potential loss of digital information, the dangers of censorship, and the importance of universal access to knowledge. It fuels the modern drive to digitize, archive, and open access to information, from the Internet Archive to the modern Bibliotheca Alexandrina. In essence, the weight of Alexandria's absence is the burden of incomplete knowledge and the constant reminder of what could be, but isn't. It forces us to continually ask, what else did they know? And to appreciate the precariousness of our own intellectual heritage. The missing volumes continue to shape our intellectual curiosity, pushing us to strive harder to record, preserve, and understand, so that future generations might not inherit so heavy a silence. The final, most urgent message from the ancient Library of Alexandria is a powerful call to preserve. Its entire history, from its ambitious genesis to its slow, tragic decline, serves as an enduring testament to the vital, incessant human need to safeguard knowledge, inspiring us to action in an increasingly complex and interconnected world. The foundational lesson is the active nature of preservation. Knowledge does not preserve itself. It requires dedicated individuals, sustained resources, and robust institutions to collect, catalogue, maintain, and make accessible. The efforts of the ancient librarians, painstakingly copying fragile papyri and meticulously organizing vast collections, were not passive acts. They were continuous battles against time, decay, and the ever-present threat of loss. This labor-intensive commitment is as relevant today in the digital realm as it was in antiquity. Digital bit rot, obsolete formats, and vanishing websites require constant vigilance and proactive strategies from archivists and librarians. Beyond mere storage, the library's history calls for the preservation of intellectual freedom and the fostering of open inquiry. The decline of the library often coincided with periods of political instability and ideological intolerance, where knowledge became a casualty of power struggles or dogmatic rigidity. Its story warns against censorship, the suppression of dissenting voices, and any environment where the free exchange of ideas is stifled. True preservation of knowledge means not just keeping the text, but safeguarding the conditions under which knowledge can be created, debated, and flourish. The library also underscores the importance of universal access. The Ptolemaic mandate to gather all books from all nations speaks to a profound belief in the shared value of diverse perspectives. While the ancient library's physical access was limited, its spirit champions the idea that knowledge, once accumulated, should be accessible to those who seek it. In our modern world, this translates to advocating for initiatives like open access publishing, universal digital libraries, and bridging the global digital divide, ensuring that the wisdom of humanity is not confined to a privileged few. Finally, the greatest call to preserve that emanates from Alexandria is the recognition that each generation has a responsibility to act as custodians of its intellectual heritage. The loss of such a significant portion of ancient wisdom is not just a historical tragedy. It represents an irreplaceable gap in humanity's shared narrative. By understanding the forces that led to Alexandria's decline, we are empowered to build more resilient institutions, foster more inclusive intellectual environments, and dedicate ourselves anew to the continuous, arduous, but ultimately deeply rewarding task of preserving, transmitting, and expanding the sum of human knowledge for all who will follow. The ghost of Alexandria whispers, "Learn from my fate and protect the light." The story of the Library of Alexandria, in its arc of ambition, flourishing, and tragic decline, ultimately illuminates something far deeper than mere historical events. the unending quest, humanity's innate, perennial drive for knowledge. Despite setbacks, losses, and the ever-present threat of forgotten wisdom, the spark of curiosity that ignited the ancient library continues to burn brightly, compelling us forward into new frontiers of understanding. From the earliest cave paintings to the most complex scientific equations, humanity has always sought to observe, interpret, and record its experiences and discoveries. This drive is not merely utilitarian, it is fundamental to our existence, a deep-seated need to make sense of the world around us and our place within it. The Library of Alexandria, in its audacious attempt to gather all knowledge, was a monumental expression of this innate compulsion. It channeled individual curiosities into a collective, systematic effort, demonstrating the power of shared intellectual enterprise. Even after its decline, this quest did not cease. The torch of learning passed to diverse hands and places, to the monasteries of medieval Europe, preserving Latin and Greek texts, to the vibrant intellectual centers of the Islamic Golden Age, translating and expanding upon Hellenistic and Persian wisdom, and eventually to the universities and academies of the Renaissance and Enlightenment. Each new era, each new culture, picked up the threads of inquiry, driven by the same fundamental curiosity that fueled the scholars of Alexandria. The tools and methods have changed dramatically. Where ancient librarians relied on arduous hand copying, we now employ supercomputers and global networks. Where they meticulously organize papyrus rolls, we navigate vast digital landscapes. Yet, the underlying pursuit remains identical: to gather information, analyze it, debate its meaning, and synthesize new understanding. The scientific method itself, with its emphasis on observation, hypothesis, and experimentation, echoes the empirical spirit that characterized much of the museum's scientific work. Today, this unending quest manifests in a myriad of ways: in the relentless pursuit of medical cures, in the exploration of distant galaxies, in the unraveling of historical mysteries, and in the artistic expressions that reflect the human condition. Every scientist in a lab, every historian poring over archives, every artist creating new forms, every child asking why, is a direct descendant of that ancient Alexandrian spirit. The library stands as a powerful symbol not only of an institution, but of this continuous, restless yearning within the human heart to know, to understand, and to push the boundaries of what is known. The echoes of its lost volumes do not deter us. They invigorate this unending quest. As our journey through the complete history of the Library of Alexandria concludes, we are left not with an empty space, but with a whisper across time, the ever-present spirit of this monumental institution. Its physical form may have succumbed to the relentless march of ages and events, but its essence, its profound ideal, continues to resonate, shaping our aspirations and informing our understanding of knowledge itself. The Library of Alexandria became a legend for a reason. It wasn't simply a collection of books. It was a symbol, a testament to what humanity could achieve when unified by a common purpose, the pursuit of understanding. It embodied the audacious belief that by gathering all available knowledge, humanity could accelerate its progress, resolve its dilemmas, and perhaps even glimpse a future informed by its collective past. That spirit of comprehensive inquiry, of seeking out and valuing diverse perspectives, transcends any single historical period. Today, this whisper manifests in myriad ways. Every major research library, whether a university institution or a national archive, carries within its foundations the echo of Alexandria's grand ambition. every collaborative scientific endeavor, each digital archive striving for universal accessibility, each project dedicated to preserving endangered languages or forgotten histories, is, in essence, striving to rebuild what was lost, to fulfill that ancient dream. The very concept of intellectual property, the meticulous processes of peer review, and the academic debates that refine our understanding of the world, all bear the impress of methodologies first rigorously applied and extensively developed within the museum's halls. The enduring fascination with the Library of Alexandria is perhaps our collective yearning for that ideal state, a world where knowledge is paramount, universally accessible, and protected. It serves as a constant reminder that the quest for knowledge is not a linear progression, but a fragile, cyclical dance between discovery and loss, preservation and decay. So, as we reflect on the Library of Alexandria's entire history, from its visionary genesis to its ghost-like afterlife, we recognize its story not as a finite historical curiosity, but as a living legacy. It is a powerful cultural memory that continues to inspire, to warn, and to guide. For as long as humanity continues its unending quest for knowledge, seeking to understand the universe and its place within it, the spirit of the Library of Alexandria will remain an ever-present whisper, urging us onward, reminding us of the immense value of open inquiry, the profound tragedy of lost wisdom, and the perpetual vital necessity to protect the light of understanding for all generations,